Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, July 13th, 2025, and today we are going to be talking about a fracture in the Republican Party's base as Donald Trump and his Department of Justice have concluded that the Jeffrey Epstein client list simply does not exist. This revelation, or maybe not a revelation, something that has come out around the Epstein client list and everything surrounding the death of Jeffrey Epstein and the investigation from the FBI and the DOJ, concluding with something that the MAGA base just quite frankly is not happy to hear about from the federal government. And Donald Trump, who ran on a campaign that had a number of different promises, actually included the Epstein client list, saying time and time again that if elected to become the next president of the United States, very obviously, which he was, that he would go out and make the federal Department of Justice release the client list that he said the government had been holding on to. And Donald Trump made this decision very early on in the campaign. This is a September article. It was before the debate against Kamala Harris. It was something that didn't dominate the mainstream media in terms of coverage, but absolutely is something that his base remembered. And then when the DOJ came out and said, everything's wrong, there's no client list, he died by suicide, and everything that the MAGA base, and quite frankly, significant portions of the American public just simply do not believe, we saw that many voters in his base really started to turn on him. And it makes sense. The entirety of this movement surrounding Donald Trump is very much built on Donald Trump's intentional distrust that he puts out about the federal government. He has built out a narrative that has served to his advantage around the government being stacked against him, about Democrats and the DOJ and Biden and Clinton and whoever else colluding, and Russia, whoever else really, to take him down. And for a long time, it really did work. It worked up until recently. It is only now, really, that we are starting to see really big points that might actually fracture the MAGA base for the first time in a very long time over something that actually matters to the voters in Donald Trump's core constituency. Because while Democrats are winning the messaging around things like the big beautiful bill and already making Donald Trump hyper-focused on the midterm elections, enough so that he's revoking the UN nomination for Elise Stefanik out of fear of losing that congressional district, going after a bunch of different Democrats, calling in Texas to redraw their maps, his focus on the midterms is largely inspired by this belief that his base that turned out for him in 2024 might not turn out for him in full force in 2026. And only now are we starting to see that the base is actually starting to take a huge pushback against him in this. Like I said, Democrats might be winning the messaging on the big beautiful bill, but they certainly aren't winning over that many voters who voted for Donald Trump besides those who are directly affected by the big beautiful bill's decision making and the cuts to Medicaid and food stamps and whatever it might be. And that is the way they are directly connecting with these voters. Beyond that, you really aren't seeing that connection. But it is this as a unique point of interest when Donald Trump promised again. I think everybody remembers that Donald Trump was very big about this. We saw all of his surrogates talk constantly, including J.D. Vance himself, who tweeted before and after when he was in the United States Senate that the Epstein list must be released and that it would be something that the American public must have access to. And Donald Trump really threw this all onto Pam Bondi. And we saw that there were resignation rumors around Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, that if she stayed, he would leave, all of these different things, to which the administration very much put to rest almost immediately. But still, leaks like this don't just happen out of nowhere. Very clearly, massive portions of the MAGA base are discontent. Even Fox News reporting that, quote, MAGA world erupts over Trump's defense of Bondi amid Epstein files fallout. It is a fallout. Voters are angry. They're looking at this and saying that this is a huge risk. Some of the biggest allies to Donald Trump and his second administration have already warned him that if they do not course correct on things like Epstein and things that matter to voters who don't consume much of the mainstream media but do know what they know, and what they know is Trump promised that he would do one thing and he's deciding to do another. When we see things like mass deportations, and we see things like Donald Trump's pulling out of federal aid and the tariffs and the big beautiful bill, all of these things are things that Donald Trump very much campaigned on. I watched the RNC near and full, and you can see that very clearly they had mass deportation signs. The tariffs were a center focus of Donald Trump's economic plan for the American public. He did a lot of what he said he was going to do. And while that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a positive thing, a negative thing, electorally advantageous, disadvantageous, there's a lot of takes you can really much pull away, but this administration has an activist president who is using the bully pulpit of the presidency to practically do whatever he wants. And so I think for a lot of his base, genuinely speaking, even if they disagree with the tariffs or whatever it might be, they believe Donald Trump is doing what he promised he would do. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with it. This certainly the majority of the nation for pretty constantly over the past 4 months has said we largely disapprove of the job that Donald Trump is doing. But for a lot of his base, the core base, that 80, 90% that is still riding strong for him, that's why his approval rating is still at 45%. He got 49.5% of the vote in the last election. It all comes down to believing that he is following through on his promises, and now that's largely being stripped away. And while I don't think this collapses Donald Trump to the degree that a lot of people are insinuating it might, I do think it actually has a tangible impact on the support that the MAGA base has moving forward. And I think that it will be examples like this that will be remembered as keynote parts of the Trump presidency that will be brought up in 2026, that will be brought up in 2028. Thinking back to the 2018 midterm elections, I remember that Democrats were really railing on Trump on a number of key issues. Gun violence prevention had come back into the main fray. People talked about it immensely. Talking about climate change became resurged in terms of public concern and public support. After the 2018 midterm elections, we saw that it was Donald Trump's tax cuts that came front and center. But most importantly, his response, his federal response to the COVID-19 pandemic. His federal response to the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now thinking about this second Trump administration, I don't think the Epstein client list is going to be just a minor bump in the road. I think there have been minor bumps in the road. Elise Stefanik nomination pulled. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to vote on that. Doesn't matter. And did it have implications for that New York district? 1,000%. But to the extent that voters are going to say, I'm not voting for J.D. Vance or Marco Rubio in 2028 because Donald Trump pulled Elise Stefanik's nomination? No. But the Republicans who sit here and defend Donald Trump and defend this decision of Pam Bondi that Epstein died by suicide and that the client list simply does not exist, voters don't believe that. It is very, very rare that you will find that the American public largely agrees on one thing or the other. And while Donald Trump might be able to shift some of the margins around this, the overwhelming majority of this nation does not believe what the federal government has said surrounding Epstein. And so it has been a point of frustration for Donald Trump's base, which very much uses Donald Trump's own conspiracy theories around the 2020 election, around the Department of Justice investigation in him, around the 34 felony convictions that he received. A lot of Donald Trump's base and key support relies on this consistent feedback loop. Donald Trump says one thing, his base backs it up. His surrogates back it up, Donald Trump says another thing. And it's this feedback loop, this self-reinforcing cycle, that it takes one portion of this to break for it to all fall apart. And when I say all fall apart, I don't mean to the degree that it ruins Republicans' chances in 2026. No, that's not the case. Certainly not. American politics is far more, and we are in a constant, ever-changing news cycle. But it does take moments like this to really evaluate that it is exactly at this point where Donald Trump is getting ratioed on Truth Social, where Donald Trump is seeing some of his biggest allies come out and say, hold on, wait a minute, let's not do this. That is where you see that section of the cycle break away. Donald Trump can't talk himself out of Epstein to the degree that he has been able to practically everything else that has come up as a roadblock in his time in public office or running for public office. I think the Trump effect has been so effective at mitigating a lot of media scandals and things that would have otherwise doomed traditional campaigns. I don't think that Epstein is one of those cases where Donald Trump can just shove it by. Very clearly, voters are angry. Not just voters on the left and not just voters in the center. It truly is a lot of voters who see articles like this one, where we are being told by Pam Bondi that it is routine that in the exact minute that Jeffrey Epstein passed away, supposedly by suicide, that the video cut out for 1 minute. Now, you can agree or disagree, but that is the narrative that has been told by the federal government. So then when people see articles like this, you have to understand that it isn't that they're trying to fight with the federal government. It is simply that there is not trust there. And I think Donald Trump for a long time had said that, this exists, Democrats are hiding it, yada, 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 made all of these different arguments saying, I'm going to release the client list, no shot that I don't if I win the election. wins the election and doesn't do it, and now is asking his supporters to move on, saying that even those who are in his base that care about this still are being selfish. It isn't helping the way that people perceive this administration. An administration that is already in the negative, that has been in the negative since March 9th, 2025. So when I think about the 26 midterms and I think about the 28 election, I think about moments like this, defining moments of this second administration. I don't think Democrats are going to stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. And I don't think many Republicans will either until they feel satisfied by the response from the government. Because it has been this that has been looming over the head of Donald Trump and his administration for quite some time now, as people started to remember the promises that he made. And now it has only made things worse. The MAGA base is not happy right now. Does it mean they'll vote for Democrats? Does this mean that Republicans are doomed? No. But it means there's a level of discontent coming from one of the most core and solid constituencies that American politics has ever known. There is a personality around this president that has made him largely immune to plenty of different things in the modern day political arena. But it may not make him immune to this. That's why there are people, again, some of the most prominent allies of Donald Trump saying, this isn't right. We don't believe this. We feel betrayed by a president that it takes a lot for them, arguably, to feel betrayed. And this is the moment that you could really start to see Democrats actually peel away on the margins, not large swaths of voters, but thousands of voters, tens of thousands of voters, potentially hundreds of thousands of voters, that even if Democrats aren't winning them in the next election, they don't feel enough excitement to turn out and vote in the general election, to turn out in a midterm election. They might vote in the next presidential, and they might vote Republican. But it is about elections in between that can make or break this second Trump admin, and right now, it's not looking great. And House Democrats aren't going to let this down either. Some House Democrats are already trying to put forth motions to force a vote around the releasing of the Epstein client list. A lot of different things that Donald Trump's administration have made out to be key aspects of their campaign, and this is one of them, which explains why the MAGA base is up in arms. They're angry, and they're angry at Donald Trump. And this is one of those few moments that self-reinforcing cycle breaks down and starts to show exactly how Donald Trump can and continues to be vulnerable over the next 3 years. Enough that could benefit Democrats and to the detriment of Republicans in elections between the next presidential. That can make all the difference as to how this second Trump administration operates over the next 3 years. So we'll see. Maybe there will be a new revelation and a new discovery and a new result, and maybe there will not be. This administration is often known to be as headstrong as possible, even amidst the face of adversity, nationwide, locally, in the media, whatever it might be. So I'd keep an eye out on it, but right now, the MAGA base very clearly is not happy. There's not much to be happy about if they aren't receiving the news or believe what the federal government is telling them. And it will be interesting to see how the Trump administration navigates large amounts of pushback for some of their core constituents across the board. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.